Welcome to M&A Unpacked, the weekly show where we bring on experts in MSP, M&A, case studies from those who have gone through or are going through the process, and top M&A and business minds to help you maximize the value of your MSP, whether you're buying, selling, or just trying to improve your business. Make sure to subscribe to the Kaseya YouTube channel so you know when new episodes drop, and you can even save that M&A Unpacked playlist for easy access. Today, I am joined by George Sierchio, EVP and Senior Partner at Cogent. George, thanks for being here.
Hey, Mike, how you doing? Thanks for having me today.
And this is like a reunion because you're one of the first people I met in the channel. And you know, it's funny because on LinkedIn, I met you when I was with Audit Sales Presentation System. You were coming from Jersey because you were always on the same flight as Frank DiBenedetto, who was our founder, and now he's runs the M&A program, among other things, at Kaseya. But I'm kind of we've done so much, you know, got acquired, and now we're joined with Network Detective Pro. So I've been really reflecting on that, and I found a picture. I was like, I want to find the earliest picture I posted online when I came into the channel, and it was one of those pictures you were in because you were on the banner for the ASCII. You were a keynote speaker, and Frank was a keynote speaker, and then the Catch Me If You Can guy, he was. Right. The celebrity speaker at the event. So it was kind of a lot of fun to see that.
That's funny. I didn't realize you had that. You didn't warn me you were going to mention that. That's good.
Yeah. It was a good time. And you know, I'm so glad to have you on here because I remember watching you speak. And I mean, you were speaking about M&A way back when, which, you know, 2016 is not that long ago, but it's a long time in MSP years.
It is.
So we'll get into all that. But first, I want to have you introduce yourself and Cogent Growth Partners. Tell me about what Cogent Growth Partners is.
Sure. Yeah, I'll give you a little rundown of how we even got to this point. So originally, I'm an electrical engineer. That I had an engineering and IT company. Started loving the IT space. Sold that particular company. No, I never owned an MSP, but we did some recurring revenue in there, so I wasn't unfamiliar with that. Stuck to the IT side of things, but my thing is business, even though I was a technical person. So I put myself out there to help people learn about their company, their business, the IT world, and how they can, you know, do the best they can for themselves, make money, profit more, be able to hire people, operate their business better, understand their financials. And while doing that, I used to always ask them, you know, what do you want to do? Have more value in your company or more money in your pocket? And it was kind of a trick question because it doesn't matter what the answer was. I was going to do the same thing because that's how it works. The better you look from the outside looking in, the better you're doing for your company and for yourself. And that'll help in the M&A world, which was just starting to come up. So this was about 2004, 2005, that I started getting more and more into it. And then I decided that since I was doing so much work that was moving towards M&A, a lot of it was getting people ready to potentially sell. The saleability of most companies was getting better and better as time went on, and recurring revenue became more solidified. And Cogent was born in 2010. I wasn't with Cogent when we started, but I like to tell people I accidentally helped them start the company. They went on for about a year and a half, and then after that, I came on towards the end of 2011, beginning of 2012, and I've been one of 3 partners there since then. So the company, like I said, was born in 2010 in this space. So all we deal with is M&A inside the IT services space. The vast majority is recurring revenue-oriented companies, but it doesn't have to be that. We deal with project companies. We deal with VARs and VAR-ish companies. We deal with all different kinds of security companies. Sometimes they're staffing companies. For the most part, it's based off of service-oriented and IT-oriented things. And everybody in the company is from the space. Some are straight out of MSP companies that they might have owned, or there are C-level people, or there were financial wizards in there, or contract wizards, or they really know the customer side of things or the HR side of things. And together with my other 2 partners, we have a 12-person boutique company spread out all over the U.S. We're based in Atlanta, but there's a chunk of us there. I'm actually in New Jersey, still trying to escape, didn't happen. And we, for the most part, our clients are different types of buyers. So about 75%, 80% of what we do is buy and merge related advice, consulting, intermediary work. We do transaction therapy is one of the biggest things we talk about because it's a big emotional roller coaster. But my whole crew is made up of what would be an M&A department that most companies don't have, even much larger companies they don't have. If they're private equity backed, they do. If they're really, really large, they might as well, or they have one or two people and we fill in the gaps for that. But for the most part, a lot of the work we do, a vast majority of everything M&A. And there's plenty of people out there that's what they really need to do. Concentrate on M&A when it's time to, just like an MSP has their clients concentrate on IT when it's time to, but they're really doing the bulk of the stuff. And then the customer is making some hefty decisions when it's time to do it. And that's the basis of how the company was born and the types of people that are in it. So on the buy side, like I said before, we sometimes we do the soup to nuts approach, everything from finding candidates, which is difficult, not fun stuff, obviously, to getting them through a little bit further down the pike and getting them into the point where you're gathering information and taking a look at that information. So we do a lot of financial modeling. Probably I'm jumping the gun here. One of the biggest mistakes people make is think that they can look at a P&L and say, okay, this is what I'm going to pay you. It doesn't work like that. There's a lot of math that goes behind it and a lot of non-math things that go behind it. And so it's just not that simple. And so that's what we do every day from the beginning stuff. We also develop letters of intent and offers and deal structures and things that go into that. And we'll deliver that. On the other side of that, my whole team can flip-flop into project management mode. We project manage, we do grab diligence, we do most of the diligence for our clients where they have to do their part when it comes to it. We deal with paperwork a lot of times too. We're not attorneys, but we've done over 200 deals in this space, Mike. All different kinds of sizes because that's how this space is made up, and all different kinds of companies and scenarios and situations and through COVID and everything else. There's a whole lot of stuff that just changes all the time, but if we can, we use our own paperwork as a setup. So we already know what path to go down. So it's not a big fight, and lawyers dot I's and cross T's, and we make sure everything goes over the course of time in as short as order as possible and get to the end and do the deal. For other clients of ours, we do parts and pieces that I just mentioned. We don't do everything. So it all depends on what people need. We don't fund companies, if you're going to ask me that, but we plenty of people that if the situation's there and the buyer is worthy of it, we know plenty of people of sources where you can get funding, and that's what we do on the buy side. Then the other stuff that we do is a lot of times people just come for us. We call it enterprise valuation, an EV. That's just straight up, what's my company worth? But we do it in slightly different stance. We do it where it's from the buyer's view, which is the important part. If you don't, then you're just doing math and taking some guesses. But we take it from the viewpoint of we look at companies, several every week, tons every month, bunch every year, and some go somewhere and some are dead in the water. And we know what people like, and we can look at it and say, this kind of buyer would like your company, so I'm going to go through this process with that in mind. And this is, a range of what your company might be worth to this particular buyer. Here's some KPIs and all kinds of things to watch out for: good, bad, different, red flags, yellow flags, green flags, things to build upon, things to stop doing, things to change if you can. And we deliver that on a regular basis. And sometimes it's because people are buying out partners, or they're bringing in partners, or they are prepping to sell, whether it's a couple months down the road, a couple years down the road. They want to have an idea from real buyer's opinion. So it's actually, honestly, every company should be doing this every year or so, no matter what, to see what kind of path they're on. And it's just a good way to run your company. Again, back to what I was saying, what I used to do before that. I used to do that then too. It's the same, it's a good purpose. It's a purposeful way to run your company. And lastly, what we do is we will do some sell side work every year. Mostly that's people come to us because they have somebody, it's very common nowadays. People are knocking on your door constantly and they get an offer in hand. They want to figure out what to do with it. Does this thing even make sense? I got 2 or 3 things I'm looking at. Can you tell me? I'm a deer in the headlights? And, we'll take on that project and do the advisory work. And if it makes sense, we'll do the post signed LOI work as well and get them to the end. So that's what Cogent does in a nutshell. That's a long nutshell. We do it all over the country. We do some international stuff, certainly Canada. Try to keep it to the US and Canada, but time zones don't matter. We go all over. And like I said, we've been doing that since 2010, over 200 deals and still counting away.
Love it. And I'm so glad you said businesses should do that. Every MSP should be doing this, like valuation, right? And in doing these interviews and talking to countless people over this past year, meeting all sorts of people in M&A and sellers, buyers, platforms, partners, brokers, coaches, you name it. One of the things that I just doesn't make sense why anybody would wait until they were in their 60s, 70s to go wake up one day and go, you know what? Maybe, I wonder if I could sell this business. Start right away. just to understand where you are, and like almost like financial advisor, right? You don't wait until you're in your 60s to go and open a 401k.
Yeah, I'm gonna start saving now. It's a bad idea. I mean, that said, most small businesses in this country, forget this space, just small businesses, they're more lifestyle-y.
Yep.
And will those sell? Sure. But they're not going to be the same thing that you think they're going to sell for, because there's just a lot of things going in there that are rough for buyers to deal with because you're running a lot of personal things through it and whatnot. That's probably one of the bigger things to kind of slow down, or at least know exactly where all that stuff is. I mean, I'm not the IRS. I really don't care. But if it's all over the place and you're taking guesses, then that would scare me as a buyer as to what else are you guessing at, or what else am I stepping into that you can't even explain to me. It's not like you're even doing it on purpose. So not running the company like that sooner rather than later, is probably the best thing to do. If you're ready, if you're really trying to get out and you want to get the best possible for that, it's going to take a couple of years of running it where you're not going to get ridiculously questioned on what's going on. And yeah, I'm sorry, you're going to pay taxes. So, do it the right way so that I don't have to take guesswork when I'm doing my modeling and everything, and I can do the best I can for everybody. And then everybody's as happy as possible, because it really is disappointing when you wait till you're 60 something and make the decision like, you know what, now's the time to go. And everybody's saying, I don't want to buy your company, or I'm not going to buy it for what you think, because I can't even understand what's going on here. You know it, but I can't understand it. So yeah, I hear you. It's something that people should do it on a regular basis. I mean, there's really no reason not to, especially with the worldview of what does this look like to somebody else? Because it looks perfectly fine to me. It doesn't mean that, as the owner, doesn't mean somebody from the outside is going to see it the same way, because they just can't follow what you're doing. So consistency and things like that are important. And not that you asked me, but I'm going to say it anyway. One of the biggest problems is most people run their business on cash.
Yep.
Cash books. Nothing wrong with it. Certainly nothing wrong with doing your taxes like that. But if you truly are an MSP, so if recurring revenue is your thing, I think everybody should do this anyway, but if recurring revenue is your thing, it is made for GAAP accounting. You should be getting money before you're doing work, if you possibly can. If you're running on cash accounting, there's nothing, deferred revenue doesn't exist in cash accounting. It's not part of the cash accounting system, but that's what we're talking about, is deferred revenue. And it's a huge thing that comes up in almost every deal that I do. And on top of that, a lot of times, the much bigger deals, definitely, but certainly could be any kind of deal where there might be a working capital type of thing going on. And that's a balance sheet item. And most people, they do not pay attention to what's going on in their balance sheet. It's not right. Nothing automatically fixes itself. Your accountant doesn't care as long as they can do their tax stuff. And so I come in there and I don't know what's going on. And there's huge arguments that go on because working capital is based off of GAAP accounting. And every sophisticated buyer is running GAAP accounting, and they'd rather take something that runs GAAP than not, because they're going to have to, because they might be audited or whatever. So these are things you learn when you do these valuations of where you stand on every one of these notions. So another good reason to do it.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about the same thing I think about every time I talk to somebody who speaks on this on the shows. I went through this process under the gun in my first business. I owned a business with a partner, and it was in the health and fitness industry, and we were recurring revenue as well. But we never thought about selling. We didn't do the, we weren't GAAP accounting as we should have been. We weren't doing anything right. And we never even occurred to us. And then one day my partner had a life incident, something that in his personal life that affected his business. And he's like, I got to either buy you out or you buy me out, or we got to sell. And I decided the easiest way was going to be me sell to him, because he was the one who kind of ran the operations. I didn't want to go back in and run the operations. I like the business part of it.
Understood.
So we had to do this within a month.
Wow.
And we weren't prepared, and we kind of figured it out ourselves. And, I look at it now from that view. I walked out with a little bit of money. I walked out with no debt. But I could have walked out with a whole lot more money, but I would have had to start 2 years, 3 years prior. That's the key, is like, you've got a whole process where you got to clean up shop, and you got to change things, and you got to do things differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it might work perfectly well for you, like it was in that business or any other business, but it's not conducive to trying to sell. It's good enough to know how much money you have and pay taxes on what you need to pay taxes on, and call it a day. Next year comes and you start all over again. It's amazing how many people are shocked at some of the things that I have to tell them when I'm, giving them my report on their valuation, because I don't just throw something over the transom. I literally go through the whole thing, and this is what we found and why, and maybe I missed something. So you tell me if you're looking at me funny for a second, but I'll explain to you why I'm going down this path the way you explained it to me the first time. And it's eye-opening, to know some of the things, because I try to take people down a path of, I'm going to pretend like I really am buying you. Take a sliver here and there. Obviously, I'm not going through the whole rigmarole, because there's a lot of stuff, but take you down a path a little bit, so people, they know, what they're going to say about your contracts, your customer contracts, that what they're going to say about whatever you have your employees sign, if they sign anything, non-solicits and non-competes and whatever else. Non-solicits are always legal, by the way. Non-competes, sometimes they don't fly, but
Right.
If you have them, let me see them, and let me tell you what somebody's going to get really nervous over, or, hey, this is great. What do you do from an HR standpoint? What do you do with your accrued PTO? People sometimes think, oh, it's great. I got a guy that's got 100 days of PTO because I let them, keep accruing. I'm like, you realize you got to potentially pay that to him, right? No, I didn't realize it. So, well, yeah, if you sell the company and he's expecting that, somehow, some way you've got to arrange is either going to be $1, or you're going to give the dollars to somebody, either to that person or to the buyer, so that the buyer can allow this person to take this time off that they're not paying for, and it's a shock to the system. So waiting until I'd like to sell sometime this year, it's really not a good idea. Forget about the whole, it's probably not what you think, not the value isn't there. It's probably a lot messier than you think in the company. To somebody on the outside looking in, that's going to cause even more problems. And again, back to the whole, maybe you're not saleable because, they just can't figure it out. Mike, you wouldn't believe this, but we've dealt with companies and recently that we can't tell how much money they make.
Wow.
I didn't say how much their profit is. I can't tell how much revenue they make.
Really? Just from their books?
Yeah, because of things like deferred revenue and whatnot, and not capturing it correctly. And Look, hey, it sounds great when you say these 3 clients pay me for these licenses 100% for the whole year. Okay, that's terrific. Are you tracking it so that you're taking it out month by month, or do you think you made all that money? Oh, it's mine. No, it's not. And by the way, if you're paying taxes on that, what are you doing that for? You didn't make the money yet. Like the guy gave you the money in November. Why would you pay taxes on that whole thing? That's not how it works. So it's an argument, but it's painful. And that's why, going at it from a buyer's standpoint, and we call it cowboying. So cowboying deals it's a bad idea. I mean, if you don't know what you're getting yourself into, it's worse being the buyer that doesn't know what's going on than the seller, because you're the one spending the money. And if you think you're going to go to a bank and get money and you don't know what's going on or what you're doing, and you weren't planning on actually modeling anything out, they're going to ask you for all this stuff. So if you don't know how to do it, which you probably don't, and you don't know somebody that does know how to do it, then you're going to be negotiating deals that you can't make. And then, the whole thing falls apart because you didn't realize all the stuff you had to do. So there's just a lot of prep work before that, knowing if you're ready. I spend, a couple of hours every week talking to people that they want to buy, and like take them through the paces of, are you really ready? And what are you gonna buy? Why are you buying it? It can't be because I'm here and I want to be here in revenue. That's not a good idea. There's got to be more behind it, to determine what you're going to buy and if you can buy it, and where are you going to look for it, and what are you going to do when you get it? Like integrating and transitioning things. If you're not going to know about this stuff. How could you possibly know unless you did it before in another life? And most people haven't. Some have. Most people don't sell companies more than once, and most people aren't, serial buyers. But which can be. So that's what we do. We also add that backing to people. It's like, okay, I've never bought a company before. You're already in the hole, because when that seller asks you what, and you have to tell them, no, I've never done this before. You put yourself, taking yourself out of the driver's seat and put the seller there, because you really don't have anything to back yourself up on, knowing what you're doing. Now they're going to say, yeah, you're going to have to give me a check to buy my company, when that's not how you should be structuring this deal. But they're right. They're nervous that you're not going to pay them. So enter Cogent and our 200+ deals, and our modeling, and we know what we're talking about, and transaction therapy. And it makes it a lot easier so that everybody can go back to being, this isn't a fight.
Yeah.
Buying a company and selling companies should not be a fight. It's not a battle. So we try to keep everybody that's trying to turn it into a battle to not do that. It's certainly not a good idea if the buyer and the seller are the ones that are doing it. So, everybody, being on the same page on a regular basis it's a very much an exercise of trust. You did that with your partner, and I'm sure you had some issues every once in a while. Like, I don't know if he's on the up and up, what he's saying, and that's the guy you're the partner with. Imagine doing somebody that you don't know.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of trust going on, and it's a trust building exercise. The good news is most of this industry is about relationships and trust. That's how you got your clients and everything else. So it's not foreign. That's the plus. Just knowing when and how to apply it. Having some education on that is better. And that's not part of the normal education of what you get even when someone like myself gets on a stage at DattoCon. I can't talk about all that stuff. It's very individualized. And so you really have to, immerse yourself in the whole thing, and not just sit there for, a couple of conversations that are really to an audience versus, a one-on-one type of thing. So we do that pretty much every day.
Yeah, and I thank you, by the way, for being a sponsor at the M&A pre-day at DattoCon. We really appreciate it. And I was going to ask you that perfect segue into this question is you were speaking at DattoCon, you're talking to the audience, and obviously not everybody in the audience is the right fit to talk to you yet, right? Or maybe they are. But what I'm curious is, if you're talking on stage, what kind of people do you want coming up to you after? Like, who's the ideal customer almost, like, because you guys work on, so you have a few different things that you do. Like, who does Cogent want to talk to?
Well, the interesting part about what I was talking about at DataCon was kind of leaning towards that enterprise valuation type of thing. It was all about, here's some little things and some bigger things that you can change to up the value of your company. Some things that will take a couple of months versus a year, 18 months to do, but that aren't ridiculous types of, swings from one side to the other. That was for everybody.
Gotcha. Yeah, that works for buyers or sellers.
Absolutely. And I even said it at the end, because let's go back to the banking thing. Having all your stuff lined up to be the most advantageous as possible, which consequently raises the value of the company, but also, puts all the pieces together. Then you can go to a bank and try to get money. But if you're not there and you don't know what your own cash flow is, and you don't have any kind of semblance of organization, not only are you not going to loan your money because your books might not be ordered, but you just don't sound like you know what you're doing. Back to, I don't trust you, I'm not giving you money, because banks don't want the thing that you bought if you failed. They don't want your business, they want the other thing. They want property and things like that. And we're not made of property, right? It's all about service. It's not about things. And so that's why everything I was saying had to do with buyers. And the same thing is obviously getting everything ready to sell. But even better is every one of those buyers are doing it because they're going to sell. So you're getting it ready at both times. I don't know if there's 1 out of 100 buyers out there in this space that are doing it not for the reason to eventually sell. Right? So it's 99%. So you might as well do it anyway. You're going to need to get money. You're going to need it to have your house in order, because you cannot integrate another company into yours without that. Right? So when I'm on stage with these kind of things, I try to make everybody my audience. Are majority of my clients, like I said, buyers? Yes, but there's somebody in the audience that's already got people poking at them. I can certainly help them, and I can talk to that. And it's better to have an individual conversation about that, because you talk right over people real quick. It's the restaurant industry term, getting in the weeds. You're in the weeds in about 5 minutes with certain subjects. The subject I happen to be talking about, which I picked on purpose, was it takes a lot more effort to get in the weeds. That's the good part. So it actually does speak to a lot of people. It doesn't matter if you're $1 million company or a $50 million company. All right. But when you start talking about, truly getting into buy-oriented things and sell-oriented things that are very, very specific, after about 3 sentences, you don't know who you're talking to anymore, because you have to go down a path and make one example. You're talking to companies that are 5 million in revenue or 50, or 2, because it's different. And it's different if you're a buyer that's looking for something that's 2 million versus 4 versus 10 versus 20. So yeah, it's really hard to do webinars, on stage stuff where you don't pick a subject that's either, look, this is for any buyer, any seller, any buyer or seller. If as soon as you get off the any part, you're getting in trouble real fast on the subject. Great subject. That's why we like talking to people. We talk to people every week that either come to us through the website or through things like this, or through when we had a talk, we're on stage. Hey, I'd like to talk to you about myself. One is it's a private thing, especially if you're selling. But even if you're buying, you don't want anybody to know what you're doing. And certainly when you look into an audience and go, who's here selling?
Somebody's raising.
Everybody's a buyer. Oh, that's great. I got 100 buyers here. I know there's not 100 buyers here. Some of you are lying and some of you are just poking around, which is perfectly fine. Let me talk to you and find out what's your best path. Here's the awesome part, Mike. There are so many different avenues you can take now in this space that didn't even exist 5 years ago. Call it pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, there's like, I don't know, 10 things that you can do now that you couldn't do before. And Some of them I helped invent, if you will, and others were, a new client came, a new buyer type client came, and they explained something like, wow, I never thought of it that way, that you can set up a whole system like that to buy certain types of companies, and that actually fits them. It used to be, look, either I'm selling my entire company or I'm big enough to be a platform. Those were your options. There wasn't much in between. Now you got tons of things. You can get a minority investment. I used to laugh at people when they asked that. Granted, still, if they give me the Shark Tank question of, can I take my $1 million company valued at 100 million and sell 10% to somebody, and then that guy also pays for everything that I do after that? Sometimes that kind of stuff still comes out, but for the most part, that's what I used to laugh at them. But the reality is, some companies are worthy and some buyers are okay with doing a minority investment. I don't mean 10%, I mean like 40%, 45%, 49%, still minority. Others are, I'll take less of a majority. Others are, you're not big enough to be a platform under normal circumstances, but the way I do things, you are. That's a new one on me. Even the fact that equity in general. So the choices of equity used to be non-existent. If you weren't being bought to be a platform, you were not getting equity in a deal. Then it changed to, yeah, if it's a big enough, if it's a PE-backed buyer and you're coming along for the ride, and it's a big enough deal, I will let the seller take equity. And then it was, yeah, you don't even have to be here anymore, and I'll give you some equity. So all things that I used to say don't do, because it wasn't a good idea, became okay as you went over time when things changed and the money and the funding availability and everything changed with it. The options changed. Now, I'm not saying everybody's going to have an opportunity to get equity in a deal. That's not even close to being true. But there is more opportunity now than there was, again, say pre-COVID. It's just not how it worked. And it's how things changed over time, because the companies are getting more sophisticated, even the smaller ones. And although some, again, aren't saleable, the ones that are, you can be a very sophisticated $4 million company. You don't have to be 20. And you do well, you're saleable. Those buyers are going to do different things to make those deals happen. And so the creativity comes out, and most deals are a lot more creative than you think. It's not, I multiplied this and that, came out with this number, and they gave me a check. It's just, it's a lot more complicated than that, but that's not a bad thing, because that allows deals to happen. So go back to a Cogent motto: opportunity and fit first, money last. That's just M&A generally, but in this space, most certainly, if those two things make sense, you will figure out a way to do a deal. If they don't, it's probably not going to happen, and it's probably a horrible idea to, from the get-go. And that's really the way to do it. And that's where, it's like, okay, I can't make this deal happen the way you thought it was going to happen, but we love each other so much. The opportunity fit is so great. If we can tweak A and B, I might be able to get you, the dollar figure you're talking about, but, just not going to happen in a simple, here's a check and we're done. But if I didn't like the fit and opportunity, I wouldn't even said that to you. So that's why it's the key for that. And it's probably the cardinal sin, not that you asked me yet, the cardinal sin of most buyers and sellers is going right to, I'm not going to give you much information, or I'm not going to ask for much information if you're the buyer, and I'm going to try to make a deal. I have no idea about the fit. I have no idea about the opportunity. I just made something up, and then I'm going to try to figure that out after you sign some kind of piece of paper. And that's where the big R word comes from, the retrade. I mean, it's almost guaranteed that that's not the deal you're going to end up doing. So, whoever was the one that raised their hand first to say, let's negotiate a deal before we know any information, a lot of times it's the seller. They're usually on the losing end of the stick, because it's going to change and it's not going to be to your benefit. It just, it can't be. So dating is a good thing. Figuring that out, opportunity and fit, you're dating. Then I can figure out how much I'm going to pay for the ring. That's basically what it comes down to. Buying the ring first is a bad idea. And that's how these things work. And the cowboying thing, again, becomes a problem, and making everything based off of price is a problem. It's the other things, they matter more, and that's the glue that makes it happen. This industry, especially MSPs, it's very, very significant because of the nature of the it's a people industry, right? If you're not good at that, you're not doing well to begin with. But if you are, that's how you make sales happen. That's how you keep your clients there. That's how the recurring revenue actually means something, because those clients are constantly coming back, and they're not complaining, and they're taking the up in price without a problem, and the new services you're bringing, they're begging for you to figure out whatever else can make them better, and yes, please charge me more money, and that kind of stuff. That's what this industry is all about. And doing selling your company or buying a company that doesn't go away. So fun stuff, right?
Awesome. Well, okay. So if people want to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch with you?
Sure. I mean, you can hit the Cogent website, cogentmergers.com, and go on there, or you can email me, George at cogentmergers.com. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Talk to me or one of my two partners. We're, ask and answer. We're educating all the time. And like I mentioned before, the one-on-one educational stuff for a half hour, 45 minutes, you will get a lot more out of that because you can ask whatever you want. There's nobody else there to, listen in on it and make you pull back on what you want to ask. So I'm here for when anybody wants to have that conversation.
Awesome. Well, George, I can't thank you enough for being here and taking the time out of your busy day to share with the MSP community. And for everyone watching, we thank you, and tune in every Monday on the Kaseya YouTube channel for another episode of M&A Unpacked. And if you're not yet a member of the M&A Concierge platform for MSPs, make sure to apply today. This is an amazing platform and is 100% free for both buyers and sellers. See you next time, everyone.